I've got a copy of an article here. It's from the British Guardian newspaper by Madeleine Bunting. It's dated the 23rd of August 2009. And the title is "In Control, Think Again. Our ideas of brain and human nature are myths. The notion of individual autonomy underpins our society, yet new research suggests this guiding principle is an illusion." I've touched on this recently to do with how our sense of control, our sense of power, is very much tied up with our personal identity, with who we think we are. I'll read a couple of paragraphs because it's very much in tune with what I've been saying recently. It was browsing in a bookshop that got me started. I was confronted by a bank of bestsellers on the brain. People are interested in the brain, aren't they? So there are some bestsellers on the brain, how it works, and how we think. There were the books which have attracted huge attention, such as Nudge and Blink. But there were others popularizing the new insights of a range of academic disciplines, social sciences such as evolutionary psychology, as well as neuroscience, which are radically challenging the most fundamental assumptions on which human beings operate. The most fundamental assumptions on which human beings operate. Some people have been doing inquiry. Perhaps that sounds a little overblown, but it's not. Who, dear reader, do you think you are? Do you think your mind is capable of independent judgment and largely directs the course of your life? Do you think that most of your decisions in life have been the product of your rational, conscious self? Do you believe you are in control of your life? Do you cherish ideas such as self-expression, a sense of autonomy, and a distinct, self-authored identity? The chances are that, albeit with a few qualifications, most of your answers are yes. Indeed, given a pervasive culture which reinforces all these ideas, it would be a bit odd if you didn't. But the point about this new explosion of interest and research into our brains is that it exposes as illusions much of these guiding principles of what it is to be a mature adult. They are a profound misunderstanding of how we think and how our brains work. They are fairy tales about as fanciful and as implausible as goblins. It almost seems like somebody's been reading the Yoga Vasistha. The goblin mind. It's not just neuroscience, it's also social sciences, evolutionary psychology, which are pointing us to this new understanding. This new understanding which is thousands of years old in India. And at the end of the article she talks about how some researchers in the US have been involved in an ongoing dialogue with the Dalai Lama to deepen understanding of the correlations between the new research and Buddhism. Here is a system of thought which has maintained for several thousand years that the idea of a separate individual self is an illusion. Still, it's quite interesting. So I've often referred to modern physics. When you look into modern physics, you see that all our notions about the world, all our common sense understandings disappear. Whatever science you're dealing with, if you look into it deep enough, you'll find similar conclusions. This is investigation, it's inquiry, but of a very limited nature. The point is, one of the human beings who had the greatest understanding of the mind was the Buddha. He arguably had the greatest understanding of the mind ever. And yet, he wasn't a neuroscientist. The problem is identifying the mind with the brain. We can bypass the brain altogether. The Buddha didn't know anything about the brain. What you need to understand is the mind. And we can all do that. We have direct access to that. So I find this quite heartening, because in doing these videos there is a feeling I'm quite up against it, because it's not going to mean much to most people. It challenges the most basic and fundamental assumptions you might not even be aware of. It's not me that's doing it though, it's the Yoga Vasistha. And there are countless texts like this which have arisen from the Indian subcontinent. Whether Hindu or Buddhist, we get this wisdom, this most extraordinary and fresh wisdom. Vasistha continued, all the three worlds are but pure consciousness. They are the unconditioned mind, the satva. The three worlds, this is a triloka, can be understood in many different ways. You might have an understanding of them already, but if you don't, and even if you do, I'm going to suggest a very immediate and relevant understanding. There's no point in just having some old doctrinal understanding which isn't immediately relevant to you. The three worlds, the triloka, is all of existence. And what is all of existence? It includes our imagination, what we might call our inner world. It includes what we might call the whole external world. And it includes our body, which is the interface between the two. It's that area, it's that region by which the inner world can exert some control over the outer world. I think this is quite a useful way of understanding the three worlds, because that includes everything. The inner, the outer, and the interface. And the point is, it's all consciousness. It's just a notional division. It's a notional division. This is what we've been hearing in the Yoga Vasistha all along. It's all unconditioned mind. It's Brahman. The elements and the creatures which the ignorant visualize in these worlds do not exist at all. And I'd like to just say something about ignorance again. Ignorance is actually cognition. It's the cognitive process. And I'm going to read another quote at this point. This is from D.T. Suzuki's Essays in Zen Buddhism. This is the first series, it's page 128. And he says, in ignorance, knowing is separated from acting, and the knower from that which is to be known. In ignorance, the world is asserted as distinct from the self. And this is the point. This is always our starting point. I am here and the world is there. This is the fundamental tenet of ignorance. This is, however, the fundamental condition of cognition, which means that as soon as cognition takes place, there is ignorance clinging to its very act. So, this ignorance isn't about being stupid, it's about depending on the process of cognition. And we can go beyond that. This is the point which is lost in traditional Western thinking. In the West, we don't understand we can go beyond cognition. We think if you deny cognition, you're preaching that some kind of nihilism is being preached. What is being preached is the infinite consciousness. And the miraculous of opportunity that this is affording us. And this is opening us up to the most miraculous realization.